Good evening, and welcome to episode 11 of the Eve Prosper Market Show. I'm your host, Lockefox, and rather than do the ship spinning thing I usually do, I'm actually just going to go straight into the show. We're going to start with the special notes, and as I had said on the last two shows, we're running a more YouTube-friendly contest that if you send me a industrial story or a market story, I was hoping to get a few of them, and I'd read them out on the show, and I'd give out a PLEX or two. Unfortunately, I only got one story, and I'm really kind of disappointed, so I might have to try this again later, or try putting it more places, like actually do a story on the blog, like actually do a little more effort. But so the winner of the PLEX that I offered was Malus Zol. And I want to say that he is Mr. Tibbers on the tweet fleet, but I might get that wrong. And he told us he submitted a story about right after he started Burn Jita. He heard about Burn Jita was coming up, and he went ahead and took his money and borrowed a bunch from a corp mate and bought a buttload of catalysts and sold them all with this huge markup during the event. And that's how he ended up getting his first billion. And I'm actually glad to hear that he made a bunch of money on it, because I've reported on Burn Jita in the past, and in the post-analysis, it doesn't look like there's a whole bunch of opportunities before and during the event. But as a builder, there's a ton of opportunities after the event. And I'll put a link in the YouTube post to my Matani.com piece about that. It usually ends up being a great opportunity for builders, because all of the suppliers sort of sit there and go, well, I'm not taking a freighter to Jita, and wait until the event's over, and then as many days as they were waiting, all get dogpiled onto the market afterwards. So that drops the price a whole bunch, and so it's a great chance to buy up just buttloads of raw materials and sit on it, because the market comes right back after a couple of weeks. And it's a really great opportunity to stockpile. But I'm glad to hear that he made the money. I'll be contracting him his PLEX right after the show. Moving on, we're going to talk about the news. And news was a little sparse this week. I know that CCP has been out for the holidays, and it's been kind of a quiet week in general. So far, the only stuff I saw specifically on most of the news sites and blogs were a couple of fights, and Head seems to continue to be an important place to fight. And there was a lot of the professional blogs have been talking about, what's the name of it? Proteus is right around the corner, so not a whole lot of news to report. If you haven't seen it before, though, you should probably read up on the Proteus information, things like recons and the new asteroid effects. Though, right before the show, Noisy Gamer came by and dropped a little bit of a bombshell that, according to CCP Peligro, over 300 accounts were banned after the rule change on the 1st around IS Boxer and ISK buying. I'm hoping that that they put together a dev blog in the next week or so, showing sort of a before and after thing, because those are always fun when they do the mass bannings. I remember my personal favorite was back a long while ago. They got a bunch of level 4 mission runners banned, and you could see the server activity because of the way that they spammed their modules or whatever. Like, the graph just went like down 20% and flatlined again. It was like, hooray. It was really cool. So I'm sort of hoping they do something like that. The other piece of news worth talking about is that don't forget to claim your Christmas presents. They should be in your account until, I believe, the 15th. But don't delay. The one specifically you should remember about is the offer for dual training that's in the account management page. You have to go log into the website. It cannot be redeemed for either dual account training or 20 days of game time. So don't let that don't let that expire without actually consuming it one way or the other. Moving on, we're going to talk about PLEX, and I'm going to be as smug as humanly possible because I had been saying since Thanksgiving here in the States that most of this downward pressure in December was expected because of sales, and there actually ended up being probably more downward pressure on the price of ISK. Maybe I have a hard time doing Noisy Gamer's analysis because I don't tread the same places he does. And that we just sort of expected it to be weak during December, just because it was going to be usually cheaper out on the open market, and whenever it's cheap in real life dollars, it's going to be cheap in space dollars. So I had said that this trend should turn around by the 1st, fully expecting it to have turned around like right after Christmas. And it looks like we're back on the upward swing. I sort of expect it to stay on a reasonable path. I mean, if you take a line of fit for the last year, that would be the slope I expect. I don't really expect it to go outrageously high. I sort of expect it to come back up to like 850-ish in the next week or so, and trend back towards 900 by the end of the month, perhaps maybe a little bit later. I have been saying that I expected a billion ISK PLEX by FanFest, and I still want to stand by that, but that's 3 months out, and it's really hard to judge prices. It's easy to judge trends. It's hard to judge prices. So if I'm wrong, I'll own up to it. The interesting pieces to note is that myself and several other people I have talked to thought about basically put our floor on PLEX at 800, and everyone was surprised by this dip into the 700s and how long it stayed in that 750 range. So I expect the trend to just keep on keeping on. That's my prediction. I think we're going to be back on the normal thing. I think it's a decent opportunity to buy if you're still in the market. It might be a time to use buy orders rather than sell orders, but we should be going back up in price. And anyone who everybody wants to be the guy with the crystal ball. That's my prediction, and I'll change it as we go to as things change. So moving on, we'll talk about minerals. Not a ton to report in minerals, and I was actually expecting a little more action after the first, because I sort of expected anyone who was using IS Boxer to just keep making hay while the sun shines up until like midnight server time on New Year's Eve, but things stayed reasonably flat. We seem to be in mostly a steady state. There's a couple of pieces that do concern me, and we'll talk about those as we get there. So Tritanium hasn't moved. I don't expect it to move. Buy Trit, it's fine. It's not going anywhere. Pyrite has been on a slight uptick. It might move up another point or two. I don't expect it to move a lot more up. I expect the low ends to actually be on an upward trend, so the actual shape of what Pyrite's doing right now makes more sense than what Tritanium's doing. I sort of expect Tritanium to have a steeper upward slope, but it's not really doing what I expect, so we're also seeing that volumes are a little bit weak. And Pyrite's trending up slightly. We just talked about that. Mexilon is staying flat. There's no reason to think it wouldn't continue to stay flat. I have no reason to think that it's going to move either way. Isogen, I think, is a little bit interesting because it keeps doing these dips and spikes back up. Isogen's another one I expected to stay relatively flat, and I'm not sure what's driving the volatility. I don't have any reason to expect that it will trend largely up or down in the next week, so I expect it to stay around 125, maybe trend up to 127 if you get lucky. Noxium is a really interesting one. It has been trending up rather sharply in the last few days. I don't think this is real, and I think this is going to pop back down to 600. If you need to buy a lot of Noxium, then I would hold or use buy orders. If you have access to Noxium, I would sell it. I think that this price is higher than it should be, because I still expect to be oversupplied in low ends, but the trend among, I still expect to be oversupplied in high ends, and the trend among most of the higher end minerals is opposite my expectations. So I'm not extremely strong on my prediction. I think that we should be trending down, or at the absolutely staying flat. I think this tick up in the last week is a little bit weird, but should go away. Zydrine is again ticking up in the last couple of days. I expect it to stay flat at that 440 level. I don't expect it to tick up. I expect it to go back down to the 420 level. And Megasite has stayed flat, and Megasite's actually the one I expected to trend down. I expect it back on that 700 line in the grand scheme of things. Not sure what's really driving the things under the hood. There might have been more illicit mining in nullsec than there was in highsec, and it might take some time for the people to sort of realize, oh, I can mine high ends, and since I'm using the low ends, I got to get rid of all these high ends. So I still expect there to be downward pressure, but I'm not seeing it yet. What I expect and what's happening are not really lining up. Morphite has stayed flat over the last week. It's worth noting that the volumes have been up slightly, and this looks like it's trending towards a sell-off, but I'm not sure one way or the other. Again, I think that we could stand to have more volume consumed in Morphite. I still think that it's really weak in comparison to where we were pre-Phoebe. I think that these changes, I think that the volumes are about half what they're supposed to be. And if the volumes ever come back, we should start seeing things go back up again. But I don't know when that's going to happen, and I don't know why T2 is not consuming as much as they should. Moving on to fuel. We're going to talk about nitrogen isotopes, which goes into Caldari towers. We've seen, if you tuned in last week, we saw sort of a general upward trend in most of the fuels. And I sort of expected this to continue at sort of a slow pace up. We hit 840 on nitrogen isotopes and came back down to 800. I expect it to be back up to that 840 level reasonably quickly. I don't know what was driving the sell-off here. I expect Caldari... So if we talk about IS Boxer bands and we talk about ice mining, I'm of the opinion, since I've discussed this with some people, that what's going to end up happening is that we should still see the same amount of ice coming out of HiSec, but it will take longer to mine, and so the efficiency will be slightly lower. Especially when it comes to Caldari ice, I think that there's enough people who can and will mine it that we will continue to see 100% consumption, or the high percentage consumption we already see. It'll just take more of the day to get there. So prices might trend up slightly because of this, but I don't think Caldari ice is in any particular trouble. As we see, Caldari fuel blocks have been tracking the dips in the isotopes. Actually, it's led the dip, which is kind of weird. Again, I don't think there's a whole bunch to say about it. I think the prices are decent where they are. I think they might be even a little bit high and a good chance to build. Because I think that I would say this is a good chance to build. Moving on to oxygen isotopes, we've been on a slow climb, and I think this one is going to be, I think it fell down to an undervalued point now here in retrospect, and it's going to trend back up to 800. I kind of expect it to level off in between 800 and 850, because what ends up happening is Gallente is the least secure ice supply, and it's the most demanded for both POSs in low and null sec for moon mining because of the silo bonus, and it's one of the most popular capital fuels. This one, I sort of expect the reduction in bot mining to be a little bit more of an impact, but I don't think there's a ton to write home about. As the price of oxygen trends up, though, I think it will bring along a lot of the moon products with it. So this would be a good chance to, if you think it's going to go higher than I do, it'd be a good chance to buy oxygen isotopes and hold on to them. It'd be a good chance to buy up, specifically if you're really secure in it, you would buy up things like the low end, what are they? Carbonides from the market. Those are a little hard to bet on because the R8s and the R2s tend to be really volatile. We saw that there was actually a pretty decent spike in the fuel block price last week, but it's coming back down. I kind of expect it to spike back up again, so I think it's a good chance to buy if you're in the business of running a Gallente tower. Actually, I might even take my own advice on this one. Moving on, we're going on to helium isotopes. It's which go into Amar towers. We've seen a recent dip under the 700 line, and I think that's a little too low. It looks like there was a big sell-off a couple of days ago. I expect this to rebound. I don't know if the margin's going to be worth it once it rebounds up to like the 710 mark. But if that's your kind of business, might be a good chance to jump on that. And Amar fuel blocks, if you're buying, this would be a good chance to buy in, to go build them. They're staying relatively stable. We keep seeing the weekend warrior effect where they're high on the weekends and they dip through the week and they will spike up again. So that's how I expect Amar fuel blocks to go. And then hydrogen isotopes, which go into Minmatar towers, also jumped below the 700 mark. They also look like they had a big sell-off here. I think that price is still a little too low, but we'll see how that one pans out. I have a hard time judging on the hydrogen isotopes. Also, the fuel blocks have stayed relatively stable. If you were paying attention and feeling lucky, you could have bought up a couple of days ago, but that action's over. Moving on, let's talk about the outliers that we saw through the Jita market. We're going to start with moon products and other industrial materials. There's been this weird sort of wave moving through the moon products where things have been spiking weirdly, and one of the latest ones has been fermionic condensates. They spiked extremely high, and they've been having a very wide buy and sell delta, not that I've been watching, over the last few days, and I think the price is a bit outrageous. I think that the 68,000 per unit is just outrageously high. I ended up buying on some of the uptick to go work on a project, and I was wincing about it the whole way up. Another one that's been sort of a thorn in the side has been phenolic composites, and this one I think is a little weird because I expected it, so when it did this high spike, I expected it to come like right back down to this 1400 mark, and it has been slowly decaying that way. I I expect it to steady state around 1,500 with the slow rise in fuel costs, but the I think that the spike, I think it's still a little bit high. We're probably settling right into its steady state. There might be another buyout in the next few days if you're feeling really lucky. It kind of has that shape. It's showing as a buy that it might trend up again, but that's sort of a invest at your own risk. Another moon material that has been interesting has been ceramic fibers. There was a spike a couple weeks ago I talked about where it spiked up, and I'm like, that if you can sell them, go sell them. I had a buddy in Corp who was reacting them, and he's like, oh, I'll sell you the ceramic fibers. I'm like, no, dude, take them to Jita, go make your money. This is a bubble, and we saw that pop, and then it spiked up again, which is really weird that it went ahead and did that twice. But it's popped again. I still expect it to trend a little bit higher towards 290. I think it's a little undervalued at the moment in light of the fuel prices on the rise, but we'll see where it goes in the next week or so. Another interesting one that took a huge nosedive, and again I think is odd, is titanium carbide has been at least reasonably stable over the last couple of months, and in the last week has taken this big nosedive, sub 115. I expect the steady state price to be 120. So if you need some, buy some. I just put in buy orders if you were watching the pre-show. I need them for another thing, so I was just lucky that the price dropped, but I expect it to come right back. So this is actually a really good opportunity to buy if you're building T2, buy if you're an investor. I think this is a good chance to buy in and hold for maybe a week. Then the last one on the moon material list that I'm going to cover is plasmonic metamaterials. Also did a similar spike and then crash. Again, I think these are slightly undervalued under the 10.5 line. I sort of expect them at or near 10.5, and they're right about, I want to say 10.2 at the moment. I don't like speculating on the racial materials, so that's metamaterials and carbides both have racial components. But if I think that the signals are pretty strong to buy, I expect it to track up slightly over the next week towards 10.5, so it might not be a bad chance to put some buy orders in. Oh, sorry, one more moon product. We're going to talk about tungsten, which goes into mostly goes into the Amar carbonide. Tungsten carbide, excuse me, and the R8s are the R8s go into mostly racial stuff. They go into racial and then like one other thing. I never remember what the other thing is, and they usually stay reasonably stable, and they're kind of piss poor performers unless you have the SOV bonus for fuel. But recently there's just been a huge uptick. I don't know if this has been a constraint in supply or a manipulation, but they're still really, really high. And I expect this to roll through the Amar metamaterial and carbide market in the next week or so. So you might want to jump on one of those bandwagons over the next week, and then ride the ripple that comes out from this spike. Talking about PI, there's also been this rotating spike where 2 weeks ago, I don't remember what it was. I want to say it was broadcast nodes 2 weeks ago, and then last week it was recursive computer mods. I don't know what they're called. And this week it's nano factories. They just spike extremely high. And if you are in P4 and you make nano factories, you should be selling them, and you should get them to Jita so you can go make huge money. I would not refactor your factory to go jump on this. But it looks like somebody did a huge buyout order and reset everything, and I don't know who's doing this. It might be tagged to some of the SOV equipment and POS equipment that's been consumed lately in a couple of the SOV fights, especially like the head fight. But again, if you can, do it. If you are in the business of making stuff with PI, I would hold off a couple of days for the Nano Factory prices to come back down. Moving on to ships, I think there's somebody who just switched their meta because there has been a huge demand for Lokis in the last few days. I don't know who is doing it. I kind of want to say CFC, but I don't know. It seems like I know that there are fans of S.H.I.E.L.D. It looks like a big meta shift in a null doctrine. So it's too late to go buy Lokis and sell them, but it is not too late to go build them. So if you can do reverse engineering, I think this would be a great opportunity, especially with some of the weakness in some of the precursors that go into Lokis. Another huge one, and this is why I think the meta change is CFC, is the Tempest Fleet issue is extremely popular. It tripped all of my volume flags, and it is just up. This one's a little harder to make money off of unless you have the right loyalty points, but if you have Minmatar loyalty points, oh my god, go cash them out right this second. Get as many of these things to market as you can. There is a huge bubble here. This is a great opportunity to make out like a bandit. They are way too high. I expect it to sort of crash down back to the 400 million mark here in the next couple of days. I think this run up is rather astronomical, but if you can get on the boat, just absolutely hop on with both feet. Another interesting one that I think is undervalued at the moment, is the only reason I'm bringing it up, is the Paladin here. We saw that the prices spiked up, and what I think ends up happening is that the prices spike, and then after a day or two, the industry people catch up with demand, and then it crashes down because there's just like 5% more product than there are people to buy it, and then it finally clears out and it goes a little bit low, and then it buys out, and then the industrialists come back in, and they sort of do this lagging wave to each other. And I think that's what's happening here, is that we saw things get really weak last week, and then probably somebody dumped some to buy order that actually lowered the price as low as it went. So if you're building, I would build them and hold on for a little bit to see if you can ride that wave up, and be strategic. I think they're a little undervalued. I have a hard time believing they're going to go all the way back up to the 1.15 billion mark, which is the high line there. But if you can make that money, then why not? Another interesting one, and probably again tied to a big a nullsec demand, is the Eris is flagging pretty hard. It's spiked up and it's coming back down. I kind of expect it to go back up to the 60 million mark, but it could actually go either way at this moment. Eris, I don't know if it's... I've never seen it as that popular of a interdictor, but it's suddenly very popular. It could go either way, so I would hesitate to tell you to go buy or sell if you weren't producing. But if you're producing and you can get them to market in the next day or two, this might be a good chance to go make a couple extra bucks. Moving on to, we've got a bunch of recons in this week's thing. If you've been paying attention to the news, recons are getting a big boost in the next patch coming up in a week or so. And the Curse was the huge winner. And what I think ends up happening here, that we saw the initial demand, and then Industrialist picked up the slack, but then there wasn't enough demand to actually eat up the extra supply. So I think we're in an oversupplied state. I expect it to rebound. I think it's kind of at the bottom of where it's going to be, and this would be a good chance to buy in again if you're in the market for speculation. I don't expect it to go that high. We might see it go up above 160 million, but I have a hard time believing it'll go much higher than that. I still think that it's worth more than 150. So that's as far as I'm going to say about the price right here on the show. Also, if you believe me on my advice earlier in the show that that the tungsten is going to roll through the market, then there might also be a blip as that goes through curses. So that's another thing that might be worth doing. Another one that spiked up extremely high and is probably again in gross oversupply is the Pilgrim. And again, if you are a fan of the changes and you wanted to get a Pilgrim, now would be the time to buy it. I have a hard time believing it's going to go up above the 150 million mark. At least not until a good decent time after the patch, when they actually get picked up by different PvP metas. But if you wanted to buy and you didn't want to get screwed, this is the time to buy. I don't think it's going to go much lower. I don't think it's going to spike much higher, but it'd be a good chance to jump in if you need to jump in. Another one, the dark horse I'm rooting for is the Lachesis here. We saw that it spiked up, again, with the recon changes. I don't know if people saw that it got the 4th gun added back, and that might be some of it. It looks like somebody did a huge buyout to push it over the 180 million mark. I want these to trend up. They probably won't. I still think that the Lachesis is a little light for its role, but we'll see. I'm secretly rooting for the Lachesis. Moving on to some modules, one that's been interesting is the Capital Inefficient Armor Repair Unit. That's the meta Capital Repairer. You get it using Concord loyalty points from incursion running. These are extremely popular with min-maxers. I think they're overrated personally, but the price has been dropping down. I expect it could go either way. It could fall another 20 million, or it could flatten out where it is right now. If you're in the market to go pimp out your capital, this would be a good chance to pick one up, I think. Mostly because you're not paying the almost 300 million they were. Again, it could go both ways. It's kind of a weak signal which way things are actually going. It might still have another 20 million to fall. So just keep that in mind if you're going to go buy it, that I might be wrong. Another interesting one that I think might also be tied to that famed meta shift that I teased at, that I don't know who's doing it, is the heavy missile launcher 2s have been flagging very high. This would be a great chance to go build them. They don't take very much time or skill. I believe some of the data cores are actually cheap too, so if you can go build them and get on the thing, then it'd be a good opportunity to go make just some quick T2 money. Another one so we talked about several weeks back, that the speculation advice for Rhea should have been, the Confessor is awesome, bet on the Confessor. And we saw that everything that was tied to the Confessor really saw a spike, and now we're seeing a bit of deflation in that, a bit of weakness now in those markets. So we're looking at the high-grade Snake Beta implant, and there's that, and then the mid-grade Slave Beta. Oh, Slave is not the same. Sorry. High-grade Snake Betas. They're low right now. I think they're overly low at the moment, so it'd be a good chance to buy in if that's the kind of thing you like speculating in. Everybody loves their snake sets. They help your ship go faster if you're not familiar with the pirate implant sets. It's not just the Confessor that uses them, but the Confessor is going to be a good use case. Another one that did a huge spike out of frickin' nowhere and has been overly high, and now is finally back down to the level it was at before the spike, is the mid-grade slave beta. And I don't know why 2 beta implants, I think those are the slot 2s, I want to say they're memory. No, I bet they're intelligence implants, have been rather weak. I think that there's some room for it to go up. The slave set is popular among capital pilots because of the it adds to your armor HP. And I actually have a mid-grade slave set somewhere that I have flown in space like 4 times with. It's a good implant set to have. If you're building an implant set, this would be a good chance to buy because the price has been overly high. I don't have a ton of faith that it's a good place to speculate in, but it's worth noting. And now the last segment of the show, we're going to talk about predictions from last week and before. I know we already talked about PLEX, for instance, which is, I'm just going to sit around and be smug about that for like the next week. But let's talk about some of the products we talked about last week and see where they went. Here we are. So last week, as I was saying, recursive computing modules had spiked, and that spike was extremely unstable. We see that it looks like there was a huge sell-off that brought the price back into line. They're still rather high, so it actually might be worth ignoring my advice on the nanofactories to actually refactor your P4 enrichment to do those for another week. They're still a little bit high, I think. They have room to fall, so I wouldn't, refactor at your own risk. It could go either way at this point. Another one I highlighted last week, and I was sort of unsure which way it was going because it looked like it had a push in volume with its push in price, which made me think that there was some new popular T3 meta built around the Legion that I have no idea what it would have been. We saw that the prices started to slump back down again. I have no reason to believe that the price is going up or down after this point. I sort of expected to just level off at the, 220 million mark it's at today. No reason to believe it'll go up or down. And I thought it was going to still go up slightly, but I was also expecting it to get more use. So we'll see. Another one that was interesting last week was the EM Ward Amplifier 2s. They spiked extremely high a couple weeks ago, and then were on trend for the last week and now are way under trend. I think that these are undervalued at the moment and could turn around to come back up to the 700,000 mark, it looks like. Again, this one's an extremely weak signal. I don't know which way to really predict this one, but at the absolute worst, it'll stay flat. I don't think it'll fall much further. And the other one I highlighted last week, and this one might be me affecting the market because for the jollies of it. I said that the Zor's custom navigation link was down low, and it's staying relatively flat. And I have no idea which way it's going to go. I think it's a little undervalued at the moment. I think the Zor custom navigation hyperlink, is a valuable implant to have. It's good for the sort of any sort of high speed ship you want to use. I think that gets an afterburner bonus. It's not a bad implant to have in your set. I think it's a little bit low, but the daily trade volume is pretty low, so it's not a great place to speculate in. And we're going to end the show at the violence report slide because I still don't have a thing for the violence report. We're working on it, but it's fits and starts because my partner and I were really, really, really busy. So he has a prototype together, and we should actually, if I can get away from work long enough to do it, should be able to start getting things moved. But with that, I'm going to end the show. I appreciate all you guys tuning in, and I hope you stay around for the extra 30 minutes after the show. We'll be we'll be answering questions. I'm going to get my partner in crime, Etienne Urkeline, who's been helping me with the code a whole buttload. I'm going to get him on the line, and if he can get on, and we'll answer questions. I did see some questions in the chat during the stream, but as I said before the show, I don't answer during the show. I've been Lockefox. This has been the Eve Prosper Market Show. Tune in live on Friday nights at 0300 game time, live on Twitch at HLib Industry. Tune in day after on YouTube at youtube.com/EveProsper. Tune into the blog at eve-prosper.blogspot.com, and I'm really going to get a domain, I promise, even though I've been promising that for a couple of weeks. You can talk to me on Twitter is really the best place to get in touch with me, on the tweet fleet at HLibIndustry. You can reach me in-game, direct message. I answer everything. I'm more than happy to talk about things. And that'll be the show for the week of January 8th. Thanks again for tuning in. I'm going to stop the stream and start it right back up again, and we'll answer some questions.